What did Michael
Prejudice.
Eric Dyson call you? A mean angry white man?
Yeah, and a mean, angry white man. Yeah.
Hilarious.
I am white. Actually, that's a lie, too. I'm kind of tan. Do I have to say this?
Yeah,
and he was brown, not black.
Well, isn't that weird?
You know, do I have to say this?
Like, black and white thing is so strange because the shades are so...
Tan and brown.
There's such a spectrum of shades of people.
Okay, I'm going to say it.
Unless you're talking to someone who is like 100% African from the darkest place where they're not wearing any clothes all day and they've developed all that melanin to protect themselves from the sun. And when you use it for people that are literally my color, it becomes very strange.
Yeah.
Now, the climate change one is a weird one. So that one...
that's because there's no such thing as climate, right? Climate and everything are the same word. Well, how did you decide which set of variables to include in the equation if it's about everything? And that's not just a criticism. That's like, if it's about everything, your models aren't right. Because your models do not and cannot model everything.
What do you mean by everything?
Well, it's also the good comedians are right. They're like musicians. It's, you know, you see this joy just transfuse them. And that's because they got an intimation of genuine meaning. Place of maximal funny is when you're just about pushing it too far. To observe the harmonious interplay of the patterns of being stacked on top of one another, and then to bring yourself into alignment. It's the antidote to their totalitarianism, comedy. And that's why you can tell anybody who goes after a comedian, it's like, oh yeah, I know who you are. You're the king who can't stand the fool. That's the tyrant. So you reveal yourself, same as people who go after musicians or dancers.
Whew. That's a lot of information. I'm still typing. First of all, Ray, please, at any point, because I know you studied these folks. But number one, my first question is why do you even consider yourself white? It's not like you're a sheet of paper. What's the matter with you? And obviously, I'm not black because I'm not from, how do you say it? The darkest places in Africa where they wear no clothes. So, you know, I'm not black either. Which, by the way, Joe, those darkest places in Africa where they wear no clothes, as you pointed out, those folks still aren't the color black. You idiot. Sorry, man. It was a New Year's resolution. I wasn't gonna call people idiots and stuff like that, but they know that. They know this. This is to fill, by the way, 4 hours worth of time to talk about things like Michael Eric Dyson called me mean. How dare he call me a white mean person? He's not even black. Is that your response to someone saying that you're crazy and that the things that you spew like this are outrageous? So this is the promo he put up as we see on the screen now. 4.5 freaking hours is what he said. So that's how long many people, I guess, enjoyed sitting through that. Did you enjoy listening to that? Did you sit through 4.5 freaking hours, Rick?
Never in my life would I do that. I would also like to point out in the promo photo that Jordan Peterson is flooding. He put on a tux to go sit in Joe Rogan's basement and report a podcast, but his tux pants are too short and they're way above his ankles. But I mean, it's just such like a ridiculous okay, you know what white and black mean as far as races go. Both of you know that. I mean, for the love of God, you studied like psychology, Jordan Peterson. You must have had to study, race, and I know that because my roommate studies. She's getting her same degree that Jordan Peterson has, and I listen to her classes sometimes when she's doing them in the office next to me. And they do talk about race and the impacts it has on the field of psychology. So he knows these things. He's just being a victim, he's just trying to present himself as some sort of victim. He called me white. I am not literally the color white. No, but you are a white man. And you're well aware of that. So this whole thing is just absolutely absurd. And then the climate change.
It's everything.
It's everything. I mean, it's not, and we know that because we're not morons, but it's pretty set definition of the meteorological, what's the word? Yeah, it's the weather of a region over time. So to say it's everything, I'm like, come on, dude. And just to push climate denial, right? And
yeah, words like that will allow people. It's again, every time you come up with a simple, simplistic, challenging explanation, like, will happen for probably 4.5 hours. All it does is give the viewers and supporters of that enough of little sound bites and one-off statements to say, like, well, is climate everything really? And they don't really know what they're asking or what they're looking for as the response. It's just something to throw out there to say, what do you have to say about that smart person? So the smart person, quote unquote, has to be the one who investigates things, looks into why maybe something is called climate or the difference between climate and weather, if you actually are confused by that. Because as I mentioned before, when it came to how things started with COVID and the vaccines, I didn't know anything about how the vaccine would work. So I looked it up because I didn't want to just make a decision without thinking about it. So that's separate. But if you have a question about between climate and weather, you may want to investigate it. Maybe ask someone who's an expert in that field, and rather than just saying, I need to find a way to dispel this by coming up with a one-liner. And then when someone has to give you a detailed response, you just go, I'm not listening anyway. You've been told you're a sheep, you're not thinking for yourself. There is someone who was thinking for himself, and I've always said this is masterfully done. It's the hardest thing to do is to convince someone who is trying to deny reality of what real reality is. They won't listen to you, so you have to convince them. It's a roundabout way of doing this. And this one particular comedian, Jim Jeffries, since Peterson loves comedians and now they push the line and they'll convince and change the world, tyrants and totalitarians. He found a way to get Peterson to actually realize a truth in the world. Let's watch.
Making people bake a cake for a gay wedding.
Making them do it?
Yeah.
I don't think that's a very good idea.
But here's the argument. So should they be able to deny making a cake for a black couple if they don't like black people?
Allowed to? Probably. That doesn't mean it's right.
Okay, so then we had the civil rights movement where they said black people, you had to serve them in your restaurants and stuff like that. And it did work and it did make our society better. But would you argue that that still wasn't right?
No, that was right.
Why is that different to now if you didn't want to make a cake for black people?
Maybe it's not. Maybe it's not different.
Yeah.
Maybe I was wrong about that.
Maybe 2 + 2 is 4. I'm still getting there. I'm almost there, and I tried to not give the answer, but I guess I have to. You got me. You got me.
But black people don't even exist. It's not even a thing according to him. So how could you even bake a cake for a black person? I do think it's like funny because you mentioned this a little bit earlier. Like these people love to attack experts. They are very anti-intellectual, like Joe Rogan and people like him. But then they bring on Jordan Peterson, and if you disagree with something Jordan Peterson says, well, he has a doctorate in psychology. He's an expert. You can't disagree with him, regardless of what he's talking about. He's not an expert in climate. He's not an expert in race, and he's not an expert in half of the things he talks about. I mean, he's literally famous for being wrong and pretending that he was going to be jailed for misgendering trans students. He's only famous for being incorrect very publicly, but we're supposed to never question him on anything. It's ironic. It's ridiculous.
I think it must be the reason why so many people are congratulating themselves when they do say things that are off the wall and get criticized. Can you believe what the woke people said about me? They said what you said was wrong and they told you why it was wrong and you're offended by it. If someone has told you what you said is wrong and then you're wrong about it, you galvanize support by saying, can you believe that they proved me wrong? Give me some money, watch my show. Okay, sure thing, guy.